Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Season 3 of In Therapy. We follow real-life people on their therapeutic journeys. It feels great to be back after an 8-week break since the end of Season 2. Boy, has it been a busy 8 weeks, launching my brand new book, Decode Your Fatigue. If you haven't already, please do go out and buy a copy. In today's episode of In Therapy, we're meeting Beverly. Beverly has recently retired and is finding a lack of purpose and direction for this chapter of her life. And she started facing up to the lifelong impact of her difficult childhood experiences. We'll be following Beverly's journey over the coming months, along with meeting 2 more brand new participants for Season 3, whilst also continuing to follow Katie and David's stories from Season 2. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified as new episodes are released, and follow my other social channels for daily inspiration and support. Here's a little introduction to meet Beverly.
My name's Beverly. I basically wanted to be accepted and come into the In Therapy program because I'm at a bit of a crossroads in my life at the moment. I retired a couple of years ago now, and I'm still trying to find my feet as to what I want to do, where I want to go, how I want the rest of my life to look. I live on my own. I'm divorced twice. I don't have any children, sadly, which is one of the biggest losses of my life, because I adore children, would love to have had children, but it was just one of those things that didn't happen for me. My parents have both died now, and I have some family, but it's a very small family. So there's an acute sense sometimes, even though I do have some very good and very lovely friends, of loneliness. And another sense of not having succeeded in life somehow, because the normal trappings that, say, a lot of people in my age group have, they maybe have a partner, they have children, they have grandchildren now. For me, that feels that there isn't anything. So it can feel a very stark place to be sometimes. Looking back on my life, I have this bit of an empty feeling, really, that there hasn't ever been anything that I have felt passionate about. Like other people I know have a particular hobby, or they've loved their job, and as a result they've progressed in it or found other things to do associated with that. And I really feel like I've never had that. I also have always had this desire to move back up north, which is where I originally came from. And I've always felt that that was where my heart is. But I've lived in the south of England now for 30 or 40 years, and all my friends are in the south. So I've got this dilemma where I know I really need to move. I know I really need to find something maybe a little bit challenging, maybe something new, something, sounds a bit trite, but something that my heart really wants to do. And at this point in time, I have really no idea what that is or where I want to live. So that's the dilemma that I'm trying to resolve. And I suppose I'm hoping that going through this therapeutic process, maybe there'll be some answers.
Bev, welcome. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you, Alex.
I think the most helpful starting point for me would just be to hear a bit more from you about why you're here and what you hope to get from the time that we've got.
Okay, where to start? I guess I won't go right to the beginning because we'd be here till 2025. But I had quite a troubled start. Wasn't big T trauma, it was small T trauma, but to the point where I actually had a breakdown when I was 11. So either I was just very sensitive or it was very substantial, but whatever, it was a difficult beginning.
And what, when you say, because I remember reading that in the notes that the team shared, that what actually, do you remember much of what actually happened?
I can remember snippets of it. It was really a question that my mum wanted basically a parent. She needed somebody to look after her because she'd never been parented. So I was very much from an early age, had to be a certain way. Like she didn't want a child, she wanted a child that she could basically offload her worries on, that would be her best friend, who wouldn't get dirty, wouldn't, you know, I mean, I was kind of dressed up like a little Yorkshire Terrier, you know, with the bows and all the rest of it, and just to be a good girl and be there for her. And I mean, one of my overriding memories is walking into the house and crying about something, I'm not sure what. And I remember in the hallway thinking, she mustn't see me crying, she mustn't see me crying. And picking up this Dolly's dress and patting my eyes with it so that she didn't see that I was upset.
Wow.
And when she saw that I was crying, I remember being shouted at that, you know, I've got much more to worry about than you have, what are you crying for?
Wow.
So that's one, so obviously one memory. So I don't
And was that just, sorry to interrupt you, was that just a particular chapter of your childhood, or was that a kind of overriding thing?
I think it was an overriding thing. And my mum was very much, she didn't really want me playing with other kids. Any other kids, there was always something wrong with them. She wanted me for her. And so she would tell me that the world wasn't a safe place. But I kind of knew that being with her wasn't safe either.
Yes.
So I sort of didn't have anywhere to go.
And where was your father?
He was there, and I think I do remember, and I could have only been about 6 because everyone seemed really tall, and my dad was 5'2", my mum was 5 foot, so they can't have been. But I know I was little.
Like a little hobbit.
Yes, looking up, and I remember my father saying, "If you don't stop being this way with this child, she's going to have a breakdown. She's going to have a nervous breakdown." And I remember looking and thinking, I didn't know what a nervous breakdown was, but I remember thinking, yeah, you're right. Because I knew the way she was parenting wasn't right.
Yes.
Saying that, bless her, she's passed, she's dead now, but she was doing the best she could. I know that, because for her, she was giving me all this love and making me into this perfect little person. She'd no idea of the damage she was causing.
Yeah. And when you had the breakdown, what were the actual symptoms of that?
I remember just wanting to die. I think I did sit with a load of plastic bags wondering if that would be possible. And I'm not sure, I don't know whether I took tablets in the end, but I know my mother would just say, oh, that's when you were very ill. And I mean, we're going back, how old am I now? 65, 55. So I'm going back 50 odd years. You know, therapy as we understand it today didn't exist.
Yeah, and also I think just recognition and dialogue about these things. I imagine it would have been brushed under the carpet fairly quickly, and then, you know, things move on.
Well, what was wrong with this child? She got 2 of the most adoring parents they weren't divorced. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we weren't, you know, my mum and dad both worked very hard.
Do you remember what happened during the period? So you reached sort of crisis point,
I
and
did.
then things went back to normal, or there were some changes? Or?
I went to see somebody. Well, in fact, it was funny enough. It was a locum doctor who I think had some experience of therapy, psychotherapy, whatever. Because I do remember she sent my parents out of the room and said, "I need to speak to her on her own." And I remember
so she knew something was up.
I remember my mum and dad my mum particularly being very upset about that. But you know, in those days, a doctor was God, so you did what they said.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the conversation, but I remember her talking to me, and I remember it being a bit novel how she was talking to me. I remember it being a bit unusual.
Right.
That's all I can remember. I mean, as I said, I'd have been about 11.
Okay.
10, 11.
And do you remember how things evolved from
And
that point?
she said to my parents that I needed a hobby. I needed something because I didn't do anything other than going to school and being with my mum and dad, or being with my mum.
Yeah, right.
And I desperately wanted to do horse riding,
Right.
but there was no way we could afford that. So I was actually sent to, of all things, elocution lessons.
I don't suspect that was your first, second, third,
Don't
fourth, fifth,
ask me,
sixth.
I have no idea
Wasn't your choice,
to this
right?
day why. It was on a Saturday morning,
Wow.
it wasn't a lot of money.
Wow.
And I think it was kind of deportment as well. Again, you know, my mum wanting me to be this
Right.
person that probably she wanted
Sounds like
to
it was
be.
more for her than for you.
Maybe, but at least it got me out, you know,
Did you enjoy it? I mean,
I did. I mean, it's so difficult because I don't know what I did enjoy. I have real difficulty with that when I look back.
well, it sounds like part of what you learned was that your purpose was to make your mum feel happy.
Oh yeah.
And so, in a sense, it wasn't what's your heart desire, like what do you want to do? It was who do you need to be in that moment to almost be like a chameleon to change what you're doing to keep your mum happy.
Yeah.
And that's a very big burden for a little girl to have.
Yeah. I mean, it was unfulfillable, really.
Right.
It was the days of the grammar school system, so I did well and I got to grammar school. But I think the elocution must have helped in some way, because I do remember when I had the breakdown, I used to be sick every morning at the school gates.
Wow.
Physically sick.
Wow.
And I think it was that change from, you know, being at home and into a different world, if you like.
Did you enjoy school?
No, I was terrified.
Right.
I was terrified of everything.
Yeah. Because you learned that your only safe place was with your mum, even though
Yeah.
that didn't feel safe.
Yeah. So, and I didn't have really friends, really. I didn't, no. But that must have stopped because I got to grammar school. And I remember being pretty terrified at grammar school. And that's when I started crying a lot. And I think it was because all of that had been bottled in for so long. And it was always, oh, it's her nerves. You know, that's what they used to say. Oh, she's sensitive little
Right.
thing, it's her nerves. And I was always this dead skinny little white looking thing, I think, because I don't think I ate properly.
Right.
So, or, you know, I was just a bag of nerves, I think, through all of that.
So you had the breakdown, and then you went to grammar school, and it was tough, and you felt a lack of safety, let's say, and holding, which really does make sense given your relationship
Yeah.
with your mum. How did things progress from there?
Well, I had some teachers that were quite good, that sort of helped, I think. Oh, and I had a teacher when I was very little who'd helped as well, who was about 5. So there were these influences.
Helped in what way?
Just that were encouraging, that were, you know, telling, because I never believed I could do anything,
Right.
that I could do stuff. And I know that the headmistress wanted me to be an Oxbridge or Cambridge candidate, but I didn't have the confidence to do any of it. I just lacked in confidence terribly. And also, you know, I tended to, because I've never done anything sporty, because I didn't think I liked sport, because I'd never fitted into that. And my mum was always one, oh, well, write you a letter, you don't have to go. You know, so I got out of
Because she'd rather have
everything.
you at home with her.
Yeah. So
When you look back now on your childhood, and particularly
Yeah.
through the lens of how we're talking about it, how do you feel?
really sad. But I mean, God, I feel like I've cried buckets about it in my life, because I've had, I think again, as I've said, I've had quite a lot of therapy in my life, because I had to realise by the time I got to 30 that it just, you know, my life just wasn't functioning.
Well, you were sort of robbed of a childhood, weren't you?
Yeah. So I feel...
And robbed of it in a way that was very subtle, in a sense. You know, not in the kind of obvious way that a child's, you know, sent away and in an orphanage, and it's like you can kind of explicitly look at it and go, well, that child hasn't got. But in a sense, you had what on the surface looked like a normal childhood, but actually you didn't get to be a child.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the guts of it. And I still now feel bad about saying it because I know they did the best they could.
Right. But I think that's one of the hard,
so hard.
It's one of the hard dilemmas though, isn't it, of any work, that you can understand that your parents loved you and your parents didn't have the emotional capacity or the tools they needed to give you what you needed.
Yeah. And I mean, they were both the sixth child of a 7-child family.
Were they really? Wow.
Yeah, my dad was brought up incredibly poor.
Yeah.
You know, it was...
So in a sense, for them to provide financially in of itself was a huge act of effort and love.
It was.
But not the love that we really want as children.
Yeah.
Do you feel more of a sense of inner safety and inner holding these days?
It's better. It's not.
But it's not where it could be. Yeah.
It's not fixed by any means.
Yeah.
I mean, I think having therapy has meant, because there was a time in my life I was drinking heavily. I think having therapy has meant I'm not mainlining heroin in a doorway, you know, and I'm not. I have been suicidal at times, but I've never done it. So I think that it's helped me from definitely having a breakdown.
Yeah.
It's kept me this kind of stability.
And when's the last time that you felt really desperate? Either you were using drink or you were feeling you had suicidal ideation. Like, when's the last time you had a chapter like that?
Well, it wasn't a chapter, but I had it last year. So I know if things get bad or I get down, it will come in.
And walk me through what actually happens.
This last time it was because I kind of, after the divorce, I ticked along really and kind of tried to make a life for myself, I guess. And went away from therapy and all the rest of it because I thought I've done it all my life. It's helped, but not that much. I'm not spending any. I had a bit of a reaction against it all, I think.
I get it.
And against all the spirituality I'd done and all of that. And the meditation I'd tried and all of it. And then I mentioned this to somebody who said, who'd been in a similar situation to me, who said, try Alex Howard Reset Program. And for me, that kind of made all things make sense because I realised, looking at the maladaptive stress response, I've been in that for most of my life. I was scared as a child, I was scared at university, I was scared all the way through my work. Sorry, it makes me feel emotional just to think about it.
So, and how far have you got in the reset program?
Right. So I started it. I'm not very quick with it. I'm on 7 at the minute, so I'm just looking at emotional. And
what's been helpful? Like what of what you've learned have you been finding yourself using?
Right. It's been helpful because I do use my mind far too much. I know that. So it's been helpful to understand what it's all been about, and that it's not just my nerves. You know,
so you'll be able to kind of make sense of
that.
things.
It's not just because I've always felt a lot of my life that I'm less of a person because I want to take a minute here. Sorry, I didn't expect to get this upset.
You just told me a lot of things which are big things.
That I'm not like other people. You know, that other people don't get this stressed about stuff or this nervous about stuff or this, I suppose just the whole way I am. And I guess it was really helpful because it gave an understanding for why I've been the way I've been.
Either I wrote the entire program just for you, or there's many other people having that experience.
Which was really helpful. And although I've meditated certainly quite a lot in the last few years, the meditations have helped because they're much more body-based.
Yes.
A lot of the meditations that I do, you get out of your body.
Yeah.
You know, you go somewhere up here, which I quite like being up there.
But it's not really resetting your system. Absolutely
not. No, in fact, it's probably, almost making things worse because then I can easily get in my head. So I'm spending a lot of my time up here. So the meditations have been helpful. And also I just started trying to do some meditation in the morning as well as the evenings, but obviously that's bumped that up because I try and do both now.
Okay.
Not always, but more times than not, particularly if I'm at home, I'll do them. So that's been really helpful. It's been really helpful looking at the energy depleting psychologies because I do them all.
Are there particular ones that you recognise?
Yeah,
are
perfectionist definitely, and the anxiety, yes, a little bit of achiever. What's the other one? I don't do the controlling. I don't think quite so much. A little bit, and I can't remember the other one. What's the other one?
So perfectionist, achiever, helper.
Oh, helper. Oh, yes, in spades.
Yeah.
Conveniently forgotten that one. Yeah. Stop process I struggle with. I tried. I had a period of being good with that, and then it's kind of, I'm finding that a bit more difficult at the minute because a lot of the emotional stuff's kicked in, and I've looked at a lot of the adaptive ways I have of not feeling emotion. And God, it's such a muddle in my head at the moment because I think I'm very good at being in touch with my emotions and crying, but I sometimes wonder if the crying is, as you just described, I've only seen the module a couple of times, so from my head rather than it's coming from my heart. It's all a mix-up at the minute.
It sounds like you're getting in touch with the feelings, and there's some deeper emotional trauma and history that also needs to be metabolized and processed and digested, and that takes time to get to the place that you're going deep enough that you're really moving that stuff. That's incredibly helpful in terms of me having an understanding, and I'm sure I'll have many more questions as we go.
Yeah.
But just in terms of building a picture of your history and what shaped you and what feels important at this point, if you were to summarize what you most hope to get from the time that we have, what is that, do you think?
I'd like to have perhaps more of a sense of who I really am, what's underneath all this anxiety, and who I could be, I suppose, and to have some sense of what to do with my life, because I've retired 2 years ago and I'm still haven't a clue what to do. Half the time I don't even know what I do really enjoy doing or what I don't enjoy doing. Or, people say, well, what's your passion? And I think, well, I don't know. I don't know if I've got one or not. And that is really sad. Yeah. So I'd like to explore, if I can work through all this hurt and anxiety. I spend so much of my time being anxious, even though I'm not working now. I'll be anxious. I better do this, I better do that. I'm bordering on OCD. If I could, it's not going to go probably all the time, but if I could get rid of that, so I'm more, I don't have to be, I can lose that anxiety when I'm with people, but if I could lose that anxiety when I'm on my own, so I can have that sense of safety without cleaning and tidying the house to get it.
Right. So that's one of the strategies.
Yeah.
So you're meditating once to twice a day.
Yeah.
You've got to module 7, so you're starting to work with emotions.
Yeah.
I'd love to explore a bit more your emotional style and how you are avoiding and rejecting your feelings and emotions. Like, if I was to paint a bit of a picture of where I think we need to go, I think you've named it pretty well. I think that there's a lot of emotion and history and stuff that's there that we need to do some work to metabolize, to process, to digest. There's then this little girl inside of you that didn't really get to have her childhood. She didn't really, and for her, knowing what she wants and what she loves and what she would like to do needs some time to be explored and to be opened up. But to get there, we need to process a bit more of the emotional history of what's happened. It sounds like simultaneous to that, what you're already doing, and I think we probably will continue to work with that, is just this overall calming of what's happening in your system. Because what happens is, when we have lots of confusing and difficult emotions that we don't know what to do with, particularly when you're also getting a lot of your mum's emotions and your dad and all the other stuff, and you're the one that's feeling all of this, is that we disconnect emotionally to survive. So we go from being in our body and our emotions to being in our mind to try and think our way to a feeling of safety.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard that phrase.
And it's so true.
So it's like, the problem is that the more that we do that, the more we get conditioned to our mind, the more we relate to the world through our mind. But then it's hard to know what we love and what we want to do, because the answers to that are not intellectual answers. The answers to that are what actually gives us joy. And because in a sense, this is not a kind of cognitive exercise, a kind of coaching based thing of right, Bev, what do you want? How are we going to get there? Let's get an action plan of the things you're going to go and do. I don't think we answer this from your mind. I think we answer this from getting more in touch with your hearts and your feelings and your emotions, and letting that become the source of what you do. But to get closer to that, we can't feel selectively. So we can't feel our joy and our passion and our desire for something without feeling our hurt and our loss and our grief and our sadness for the fact that we haven't had that and we haven't experienced that historically. So I think it's a combination of, in a sense, you've already got some really good things in place, right? The meditation, I think, great, keep going. The awareness around what you're doing with your feelings and your emotions, I think, is really important.
Right.
So if between now and next time you could spend some time writing down a bit about your emotional styles from what came through on module 6, what you notice you're doing when you have feelings and emotions. Like, it sounds like one of the things is perhaps you feel anxious, so you start cleaning. Like, when you feel, what do you do? That's the piece I think we really want to get the awareness around. And then I think let's explore that a bit more together next time. And then I think what I would say is, feel free to keep going with the reset program stuff, but we'll also take certain pieces and we'll dive deeper into those pieces as well. I'm very conversational in how I work. I would like to understand what's going on, but I'm also really into having the tools and the strategies, and the real change doesn't happen you and I sat on these sofas. The real change is what happens in the days and the weeks but between you and I sat on these sofas.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But my sense is that it's interesting, because sometimes when someone's out of touch with their own sense of purpose and joy and so on, you ask them what they want and what they need, and they can't give you an answer. You actually give me a very articulate answer for what it is that you need to work on. But it sounds like having the right support and the right holding in that process is going to be really important.
I think so. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
What questions do you have for me?
I mean, the one is, and that's up to me. Is it possible for me to change? Or at least...
Well, I think you're actually asking me two questions. I think you're asking, is it possible to change, and is it too late?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm being blunt with you, but I think that's what you're
it is.
me.
I mean, that was one reason that I really nearly didn't do this, because I thought, I'm too old now, and that's another reason.
And it's one of the reasons why we picked you to do this. Just so you know.
Yeah, because I thought I'll never get on it, too old, too bad.
Yeah, and that is that's a common belief that people have.
Yeah.
And I feel, and I'm being serious, one of the reasons why we had dozens and dozens of applications, and one of the reasons why we picked you is, we believe you can change. And I don't believe it's too late, but I think it's really important that not just you, that other people realize that it's never too late for us to be able to create change in our lives. And sometimes the more years that we've been grappling and struggling and frustrated by the same issues, the more power we have to change them, because we've got so much suffering tied to it that we get to a point in life that we just don't want to fuck around anymore. Excuse my language.
Well,
but it's like, well, yeah, I could spend another decade sort of stuck in this way of thinking, but actually, I maybe only got so many decades left. I think I'm going to. So that there's often a willingness to show up and to do the work when we have a few more years behind us. So I absolutely believe you can change. I absolutely believe it is not too late, and I think that it's absolutely the potential that your greatest years are ahead of you. But
That would be, that's really hard for me to believe, I have to say, because, yeah, I'm still shocked that I'm sat on this sofa, if I'm honest.
How does it feel to be here now?
I feel comfortable, obviously, because I wouldn't have been able to share so much if I didn't. And it feels a bit scary, but it also feels there's an excitement to it as well.
Good.
That, you know, if I can be looking forward to, you know, a better time than a lot of the times I've had in the past, that would be, wow, that would be amazing, really. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The session with Alex, I was surprised how much stuff came up for me. It was a lot, and a lot of things that I'd forgotten about. There's an element of feeling that I have a lot to go through and process and look at, and in some ways that feels a bit, oh my God, I've done this before, I'm doing it all over again, and will this be different this time? Will I be able to change? So that feels a bit daunting. Anyway, I felt very held and contained, and the environment felt very safe. It was odd to begin with, being filmed, but I really didn't feel that impacted on the session at all, because I just forgot about the camera being there. A new beginning almost, it feels like.
I hope you enjoyed meeting Beverly. I'm super excited to bring you along on Beverly's therapeutic journey over these coming months. I think a really important lesson from this first episode is that however old or young or whatever we may feel, it's never too late to make change. In fact, sometimes the older we get, the more wisdom we have and the more of a sense of urgency we can have to really get stuck in, to do the hard therapeutic work, which is often the source of the changes we want to make. And I can't wait for you to see some of the transformation that's coming up for Beverly. In next week's episode, we're going to meet Sanaya. Sanaya is in her early 20s, and she's been battling with anxiety and panic attacks, particularly worsened by the pandemic that we've all been living through. Here's a taste of what's coming up next week.
The reasons why I'd like to have therapy, mainly my anxiety.
Do you remember when you first experienced anxiety?
As I left uni very abruptly, because of COVID, everything that I thought was just so normal, all of a sudden so fragile.
If you can train your mind to have anxiety, you can train your mind to be calm.
Yeah.